So this is all looking pretty decent to me. The last thing that we would probably want to do with a program like this is maybe write some legitimate tests. But I also am curious, well, what values could I actually create? Maybe I do have a hand that looks just like this one from my sampler. So I'll call this my hand is equal to sampler. We'll say .send, we'll send in, I think you get 8 tiles to start out. So I'll print our hand there. So if these are the tiles that are in my hand, what's the best word that I can make? And so we'll, of course, use the same logic that we had before, and we're just missing one kind of important thing. What are all the words that I can actually make for our game here? And so when we want to figure out what words that we have, I'm just going to ask my computer. And no, not ChatGPT. I'm simply going to check out the words that exist in my computer's dictionary. So I'll just tap into user, share, dict words as F, and then this should have one word per line. So we'll call word in F. And just print out each word and give that a go. That looks good. And this will be word.strip, just to get rid of that extra new line. And then you can kind of see, just based on this printout, not all of these are valid Scrabble words, even though they might autocorrect appropriately. For instance, right, we have an apostrophe S in a word, and I know there's no apostrophe tile in Scrabble. So I'll go ahead and I'll account for that as well. And so I might want to put just a few filtering conditions here, and I'll collect these maybe into a set or some type of Python container. And we'll say if the word is alpha, that means there's no special non-alphabetic characters. And the word, actually let's put a length requirement. The length of the word is greater than 3. Right, because we need at least 3 letters, I believe, to form a valid Scrabble word. And then finally, the last thing that we'll want to check if the word is lower, or all lower, I should say. Just like that. Then we'll say this is a valid word, and we'll add the current word to our word set. Let's go ahead and take a peek at our word set. Just a quick eyeball, this is looking fine to me. So we'll have our sampler, we'll draw some values out that say that this is our hand, and then we'll score our candidates. And so we have our find candidates function here. And we'll just unpack these, find candidates. And for our find candidates to work, we pass in the letters in our hand as well as all of the words. So starting with those letters in my hand, those are all of the words that are at least 3 letters in length that I could make. And let's see which one is the best. So here, just grab that, keep that for the future. And then we'll take the max of our find candidates and pass in the key equals score. And this doesn't need to be unpacked. Of course, this should be our lambda, because just in case we have custom scoring rules. And we'll use the default point system there, just like that. So this is telling us that zoom is in fact the best value here. Now if we run this a few times, well, we see there's a little bit of non-determinism here. And we might want to mitigate that from our program. But my gut instinct would say that maybe zoom and gonzo are worth the same number of points. Since we are storing these words in a set, their ordering is non-deterministic. So maybe just to keep things consistent, I'll use a list of words, and now I will always get gonzo out every single time that I run this. A little bit of determinism is going to help us write some of our tests here. So we have a fairly well working game of Scrabble here, and we have a few functions that are going to help us accomplish the task. Now, the last portion is, well, maybe I want to save these out. So we'll call this scrabble.py. And let's write just a couple of quick tests. So for our testing, the first thing, I just want to make sure that importing Scrabble does work. And since we didn't get a failure, we can in fact import our Scrabble. So we have a couple of things that we want to do. I think the easiest thing to test, is going to be our scoring algorithm. So I might do from Scrabble import score. In order to score things, I'm also going to need some points as well. So I'll grab that global. Then we can start defining our test. Now I have hypothesis, and you see PyTest here. So we'll use hypothesis to generate our fixtures. And so this will be from Scrabble import score, just like that. And then, like I said, hypothesis import given. And we'll also need a couple of hypothesis strategies to generate those fixtures, but the standard pattern is going to look like this. We have some givens, and we of course have the function that executes the test. PyTest will know to pick this up since it starts with test, and we're going to score words here. So we can just tell PyTest that for these fixtures, and here's where we're going to need from hypothesis text, just like that. So we can tell Scrabble that we're going to generate some text. Now, one thing that we may want to limit this function to is we may want to limit it to just alphabetic characters, but that might edge out some corner cases that we could encounter. So let's see what this would look like without that first. Now, we'll also specify a minimum and a maximum size here. Well, let's see how these tests goes. So to actually test this thing, I would first score the word that's been fed in. Total score is equal to the score of the generated word. With the global points dictionary here. And this already, and we need to, of course, import our points. This already has failed us, and this gives us a key error. And so we know one thing, at least with our default point system, we're going to encounter a key error when we pass in things that are not alphabetic. We have two options here. We can either narrow the test till it matches what we know that it should be inputting, or we can catch this. We can have a branching piece of logic here. We can say if word is, dot is alpha, then we'll score our word. Otherwise, we'll expect from PyTest import raises, we'll expect to encounter an error here. And so we'll say with raises, and this will be our key error. Then we'll attempt to, of course, score this thing. Now, I probably could just do this with a null context manager and pass that off, but let's see if this works here. Now, we have a failure on an uppercase letter. It's alphabetic, but it's not uppercase. So maybe in our scoring algorithm, we should case fold from within the scoring and just try and hit all of the entry points here. Or we can tell our user that, you need to case fold these things. So let's say dot case folds just like this. And so now we are failing just with a simple empty word here. So we're saying that an empty space is not alphabetic. And so one thing that we might pass, well, I might just say that the min size of my string here is going to be, well, just at least one value. And this will have to be and word dot is, I believe is ASCII. And now we have effectively found out what type of text we can and cannot insert. This is honestly why I love using hypothesis so much, because it helps you figure out those corner cases, those edge cases where your program will break, but you're really not expecting it to. And so this is why we go through this practice of writing tests and continue to write tests for each of these individual pieces. But I think we've done a fairly good job here. And that's our job of creating a program that runs, creating a program that meets the requirements of our individual client here, simulating a single turn of the game of Scrabble. We've successfully been able to draw n tiles from a population. We can then use those tiles to figure out what possible words we can make, and then from those candidates we can narrow down. And now we've built this in such a way such that we're not reliant. Each of these pieces is not reliant on each other. And so if I do want to go back and figure out how to revamp maybe the find candidates function, I can easily do that without being too concerned that I'm disturbing the other pieces of my code. Now, the last thing that I would probably do is once I create unit tests, these tests for my individual functions, go back and I'd create an integration test and just making sure that all the pieces do fit together when I'm ready to use them. But that does bring us to the end of the time that we have allotted for today. We talked a lot about the game of Scrabble, how we would prototype it, and importantly, how we can test it. Then from those tests, we figured out, well, what else should I be trying to account for in my given program? And we went back and we revamped just a couple parts of our program with the results of our test. Hope you learned a lot from today's session, and make sure that you tune in next week when James presents on our very final game and, of course, reviews how he did. Thanks for joining, everyone, and I'll see you all next time. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like, hit subscribe, and check out the recommended video on the screen. See you in the next one.